1 second. Let me turn my do not disturb on. What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? Hello. Happy Saturday. I hope you're having a great weekend. I'm coming on today with a new topic, specifically focused on leaders who do wrong and call it right are dangerous. And this is something that we deal with every day, of course, in our everyday life, whether at work, whether at home, what we witness on TV, on social media, just everywhere that we witness leadership claiming to do that the actions that they are taking are right and are responsible and are beneficial, but they really aren't. And these individuals are dangerous, not because they're loud, but because they are certain. They are certain that what they are doing is right. And they don't question any of the decisions that they make, but they actually defend them. And they don't see any harm in any of the decisions that they make. They just really justify it as if they are correct. They don't focus on how they're impacting others, and they use fear to make others not question them. That is fear of retaliation, fear of being labeled difficult, fear of losing everything if you question a leader's actions when they are wrong. And that is something that is dangerous. That fear is actually not accidental, but intentional. It is all a part of a systemic barrier that is put in place for survival. Fear so that they are able to survive in the place of power. Fear is there to hinder any other person from holding them accountable, because accountability is where they actually have to somewhat appear as if their actions are not right, or by justifying it, right? Because that's what it's all about. It's not through one dramatic moment, it's through the thousand quiet ones and the idea that they're never going to get hurt, right? And so it's all about trying to fight through that and trying to help individuals like other people that are dealing with these types of issues and dealing with leaders that are in these places, and they're protecting these systems that are holding people back. And how can you do that? Hi, Brittany. Hope you're doing well. The future belongs to those that are courageous, right? And courage is contagious. So when we are tapping into that and not fearing, calling out and holding leadership accountable, you know, then we're able to inspire others, because that inspiration is what's going to bring about change. That inspiration is what's going to change the future. It's going to be the present. That's going to be the action that leads to differences in a better future. And you only can do that by recognizing how individuals are able to maintain power in these situations. How are they able to continue to implement forms of fear, right? And that's because they're relying on that fear, because, as I said, courage is contagious, but so is fear. So they're allowing for fear to hinder anyone's ability to think that they can be capable of doing something. And that's all about just how, when you're instilling that fear in someone, then you're able to instill the idea that something can never change, that there can never be movement, that there can never be growth, that there can never be another opportunity, right? And that's not true. But that is how the systems of the past that are still enacted today keep us from moving forward, keep us from growing, keep us from aspiring others. And that's because the idea that change is not certain, right? The future is unknown. So that in itself helps to create the understanding that fear results in you not wanting to know the unknown, but to accept and become complacent with what is of present day, regardless of how you're being hurt, hindered, or even you may be doing well, but you're witnessing other people not doing well, other people hurting, other people suffering. But since you aren't suffering, it's as if it's okay. And that's where leadership can continue with the wrongdoing and calling it right, because they are the dangerous one in the room. They're the one that's helping to create the facade of their actions being beautiful, of their actions being miraculous and beneficial to all, when really it is not. It's easy to accept, when you look up to leaders and someone is inspiring you. And it's easy to become blinded because of the charisma and the charismatic way that they can be draw you into them. That's the key. And that's what makes it easy for them to claim that actions are beneficial, but really they're not. It's easy to do that when we're looking up to people that really aren't those that should be looked up to. And then the fear of you really relying on leadership for, whatever opportunities, or not being labeled difficult, or, even having the thought that you're going to benefit from the spaces that that individual is in and commands, you know? And that's where we forget, us as leaders, as ourselves, us being leaders for ourselves, that, every decision that we make determines how we are impacting and influencing others, but also how we are going along with influencing the future, right? So that's why it's important for us to not be afraid to call out actions. And when we call out, that courage inspires others. That is one thing that we need to move through in the future, and not be afraid to hold ourselves accountable also for us allowing leadership to enact a illusion over us. That's where we have to learn from our mistakes. And as we're learning from our mistakes, not being afraid to speak up about those mistakes. And then that also empowers others and influences others to take those same actions. Because a lot of the times we go through life and we're just movement, it's movement and just survival, and we're just here. And we're just in a routine, and we're trying to get by, right? So it's automatic to look up to leadership and assume that they are leading us down the right path, to assume that they would never lead us into a dark alley or down a cliff, right? We're assuming that, right? We're assuming, and that's because when we look to leaders, they're there to help us and to inspire us. That's what leadership is about, right? And we forget that those that are in leadership positions, many are just managers. They're not leaders, meaning that they're there to just uphold the systems that we currently are in, to keep things aligned so that they can maintain power, and those that are aligned with them, they maintain power, and they maintain control, and they maintain the enrichment of themselves. So it all is all a part of a system, and a way to guise and to distract as well. And that's why it's important for us to recognize, are we really being benefited through leadership? And how is leadership really benefiting us? Those are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. Are they managing, or are they leading us? Are they leading us astray, or are they just holding us in place? Or is it both? That's the question that we need to ask ourselves. That's the things that we need to recognize, how we're moving forward, and and as we're moving forward, how is that benefiting us? How is that benefiting those around us? How is that creating a world and a future? What does that look like? Or is it time for us to remove that leadership, redo those systems, and hold others accountable? That's where we are. That's where it is. And that's what really matters. It's all about us recognizing that, taking that look, just like this image, which I'm going to keep using because I really like it, because I feel like all of the topics that we're having, they're all just, we got to really dig in. And is leadership really taking us down the right direction? Are we being led astray? What is really going on? Those are the questions that we need to be asking ourselves. Are we being led down a dark alley, off the cliff, to detriment? Or are we just being managed in a system and in a process, to uphold the few and keep the many below? Either way, both are aligned, regardless of who's in that leadership position, if you really think about it. So that is something that is definitely important to understand and recognize, because Even when someone's wrong and they get to justifying, that doesn't mean that their justification is correct. It just means that they're finding a way justify to explain why they are correct when really they're wrong. And that's where people fall off because we don't want to call people out and say that they're wrong. And that happens a lot. People don't want to say, you lie. You're not telling the truth. And it's not hard to do that. It's not hard to call people out and call a thing a thing. And that's why leadership is failing today. And that's why leadership is able to keep going about doing the things that they're doing and not really creating change, but only aligning with the ideas and processes that align with what their ulterior goals are, which are aligned with power, not with balance and not with equality. That's something that is hindering us and that is intentional. It's not accidental. These barriers are there for their survival, not ours. And that's something that we have to recognize and understand. But it is scary to even say that, right? Because we look to leadership because that's how we as humans are, right? We're used to being in a collective where we all, are one, with whatever is aligned with our idea and what we feel is like us. That's a typical thing, right? That's psychology tells us, so that's why we look to someone to lead us, someone that we view as strong, someone that we view as knowledgeable and competent, right? But just because you view them that way doesn't mean that they're really competent. It doesn't mean that they're really capable. You're just assuming that because of what they've told you. You're assuming that because they may speak louder, walk into a room with their head high, right? But that doesn't mean that they have all the confidence that's necessary. It just means that they're good at presenting themselves. They're charismatic, and then their way of words is what allows them to talk you down into the deeps and depths of the rabbit hole, right? Or in your life when you're dealing with individuals that have that same charisma and they turn out to be narcissists or anything like that, So those are the lessons that we have to learn. Those are the things that we need to learn from the past. So that has followed us continuously into the future because we're not calling a thing a thing. We're not calling it out when we see it. We're not ensuring that it is handled correctly when the actions are done. People just get quiet. And that's one thing that's interesting. People can be the loudest when it's someone that they don't like that does something wrong. But when it's someone that they love, they become quiet when they need to be called out. They become quiet when accountability is necessary. They become quiet when they don't want to question someone's justification, even though it is not based on facts. You cannot be quiet just because you like someone. You cannot be quiet because you view someone in a high regard. You cannot become quiet because you assume someone is, doing right when evidence is showing that they are doing wrong. All because you like them. Love ain't gonna keep you alive. Liking someone doesn't help you to advance your life. There's no guarantee for that. Sometimes the people that we love are the main ones we need to walk away from. That's one learning lesson that many know. Just because you love someone, just because you like someone, doesn't mean they are good for you. And that's one thing that needs to be understood for us to change the way that leadership is operating in our lives and in society, in our workplaces, and just us as leaders as well. Because we mimic what we see, right? We mimic actions that we see. So if we're seeing bad leadership, poor leadership, leadership that has no real understanding or accountability and just out here doing what they think is right when it's actually wrong, and no one is questioning that, then that means we're going to go and mimic those same behaviors. And this is why we continue the cycle of ignorance, because we're not calling a thing a thing. And that's something that we have to learn from. And we have to be the change. You have to be the change. We all have to be the change. And that's the key to true evolution into a better form of leadership, a better future, and a better world. A world that is fair, equal, and inclusive. environments and workspaces that are fair, equal, and inclusive, and allow opportunities for all. This is the key to that, and only will occur if we are the change. So I leave you with that message, and don't forget, be the change. Until then, love yourself and others. Bye.